Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. You've chosen a really exciting day to join us on the show because I'm here with the new economy editor at LinkedIn, Caroline Fairchild. Caroline, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much.
I want to start out with, for you, what your ideal vision of media is today.
Yeah, it's a big question, but I think that I'll start with the problem and then we can kind of work towards my vision of what I would love it to look like. We live in a very crowded, cluttered, and loud media environment right now. There are so many places where you can go to get information. There are so many content producers that are trying to get your attention and build an audience. And I feel like what has yet to be seen is that perfect intersection between quality content and quality platform. We have tons of amazing content producers who are producing great reporting, great stories, great insights. And we have some platforms out there that are doing a good job of kind of pushing you stuff based on what they think is what you want to read. But right now, what I'm interested in building at LinkedIn and kind of why I came to LinkedIn in the first place is kind of finding that perfect intersection between the two. So bringing you highly relevant content where you already are in your social network and, giving you ways to engage with it in a meaningful way.
And as you focus on that, you and I were just discussing, which was embarrassingly news for me, that working on your article is really important. But once you publish it, that's where the real engagement comes in. And I was thinking, oh no, I typically just publish and forget. What should people be doing after they publish?
Yeah, I think that kind of represents the old media model versus the new media model. And, in the old media model, as a reporter or a writer or someone with some insight that you wanted to share, you would hit publish, you would share it with your editor or with the publisher that you're using to get that information out there. And then your work was kind of done. But now what we're seeing is that really is when your work as an expert, your work as a writer just begins in terms of making sure that your piece is getting in the right hands. So sharing it on your social networks, emailing your colleagues to make sure that they're engaging with it as well so that it doesn't get lost in the mix. And hopefully social networks like LinkedIn can do a lot of the work for you by notifying your coworkers and your followers that you have published a post or that you are sharing information. But, there's also some emphasis on making sure that you're playing a role in that as well.
And one of the things you guys have done so well, I think, as I was sharing with you before, is my best friend from 8th grade, instead of commenting on Facebook or Twitter, even our own website, always comments on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
How are you fostering that community?
Yeah, well, and that's you. That's your community that you've fostered. And, LinkedIn is an incredible place to share insights because, your high school friend is there, your boss is there, everyone that you have a professional relationship with or connection with is there. And when you publish a post, they get a notification that you've written. And that really serves as kind of the initial social juices that get traction around your post so that, the network knows that this is quality, that it's something that a lot of people are engaging with. And that's really the power of publishing on LinkedIn versus any other place because you have that built-in network. It's a professional context, so people are coming to the platform to really engage. We find that on other social networks, people are coming either to waste time or to kind of find something to distract them. But when people come to LinkedIn, they want to engage, they want to learn something, they want to get better in their career. So if you have content that sings to that and you have good connections and great followers, then you're going to have a great experience.
And for those who don't know exactly what your day-to-day is like, what's life like in the day of Caroline?
The day of Caroline is very different depending on what's going on. But, I can walk you through probably a typical day. So I wake up in the morning, I head to the gym. It's really important to me before the day gets started. I find that my mind works better after some time at the gym. And then I really just dive into the news and I dive into what's going on LinkedIn and I try and merge those two things together. So my job is really to bring quality conversations and insights to the platform. I specifically work with the audience of VCs and entrepreneurs. So really what's going on in startup land. So I'll read through what's going on in tech meme, what's popping up on my Nuzzle, what I'm seeing in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And then I have to make some game time decisions. Do I report out a piece? Do I reach out to some experts to comment on some breaking news? Or I try to start a conversation another way? And it's usually a combination of a lot of different things, but that's probably my favorite part of my job at LinkedIn is when I was a reporter, all I could do was really write, but now I can engage others and, lean on their expertise and figure out other ways to get meaningful conversations into your feed.
And so, midday when that's happening and you're kind of executing on
Yeah.
each of those, when do you know, hey, I'm going to write this story and get it out, or I want to have someone else come in and share their expertise? Because that's a big part of LinkedIn too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are stories I probably know already before execution is happening, just because there are stories that we need to post now. And so if it's a breaking news story, if it's something, I was the weekend editor this weekend, and the news of Scalia's passing came out. So this does not relate to Startup Land, but as the weekend editor, I'm charged with creating a meaningful news experience across the platform for all of our members. When that story came out, I quickly sent an email to several of our influencers in the law space to see if they could write, and got responses immediately saying, yes, I'll have something in an hour. So if I don't get those responses, then I'll have to kind of pass the buck to me trying to write something that is meaningful as well. But sometimes, there's a great story. A good example of this is when Marissa Meyer announced that she was only going to take 2 weeks of maternity leave. That's something that I feel like I'm a personal expert in. I've done a lot of reporting and writing in the female tech space. And I wrote a piece, within an hour that went up on the platform. And so it really is case by case. But again, that's what's so exciting about the job.
Do you have a dream story?
Yes. In terms of a dream story that I would love to write, I mean, there's so many things that I'm interested in, but right now we were just talking about this. On top of mind is this topic of diversity in boards. And what's so intriguing to me about boards is that they're these black boxes. Board members go in, they come out. There's no transparency in terms of what actually really goes on in the board meeting. It's a very secretive meeting. So if like pie in the sky stories for me to write would be, maybe even being able to be a fly on the wall in several of those board meetings and really giving readers an actual look inside what it's like to be on a board. Because I feel like one of the major reasons why we have such a diversity gap in the boardroom is because there's just no transparency in terms of what that actually looks like and the skills that you actually need. So I don't think I'll be able to write that story anytime soon, but if I could, have a dream story, that would be it.
I love that, and I've never thought about it because I had to ask a friend, what do you do in the board meeting?
Yeah. Yeah, because, it's very top secret, and it's that way for very good reasons in terms of making sure that the company stays competitive and the information stays in the room. But from a perspective of getting different voices into those rooms and into those tables, it's important that there is some sort of transparency. So I feel like I've kind of chipped away at stories that kind of get to that transparency, but actually being able to sit in the room and hear what goes on, I think would be really meaningful.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because it really shows the intersection of journalism and the way that you can really use it to raise awareness for something or showcase an individual or organization that's doing something really meaningful.
Right.
You've had an amazing opportunity to speak with a lot of incredible people and profile companies. As you look back, what are some that really stand out to you, whether it was personal learning or what you're able to contribute to the conversation?
Yeah. So personal learning for me, the biggest profile that I've ever did was about 6 months into my job at Fortune. I was charged with profiling Chip Bergh, who's the CEO of Levi Strauss. And this was a magazine feature. I was 6 months into my first like hardcore reporting job at Fortune. I was petrified.
No pressure.
Getting a 12-page feature in Fortune is something that even 5 years ago, you would have to wait, years to get that opportunity. But because there's so much upheaval in terms of what's going on with traditional media, that's something that I got 6 months into the job. So that was a really big learning experience for me. And the biggest takeaway that I got from that is just how important it is to make people that you're interviewing, make people that you are profiling comfortable. And the best way to do that is to see them in their natural environment. I don't know if when you interview people and they're, at your office or they're in some conference room that they don't spend a lot of time in, it's really hard to get great anecdotes and to see them as a person. So when I profile people, I tend to always request that I meet them where they work. I see them maybe even run meetings, or, I meet them, I try and see them in their natural setting as much as possible, because that's really when their true character comes out. And that was when I profiled Chip for Fortune. That's what I really saw, and the piece that I wrote speaks to that. I feel like I really got to know him.
And I think that's something that you guys are really focused on and do a great job of at LinkedIn, of really giving your reader a look into what life is really like.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, LinkedIn is in such a better position to do that because Chip can write directly for LinkedIn with his thoughts, as can any executive, which is really the power of the platform. You don't have to go through a reporter like me to have your story told authentically. And that's the dream. That's what we love to see at LinkedIn, is when executives, people with great stories, come to the platform and share their authentic voice. That's the dream. So yeah, keeping online with Chip. Once I started working here at LinkedIn, I now work with him editing his post for LinkedIn. And because I know him so well, I can kind of push him and say, hey, this doesn't really sound like you. So that's really the best part of the job, is having those different ways of telling a story.
I'd love to spend a couple of minutes too, if it's all right with you, to talk about your work working with founders, leaders, executives,
Yeah.
investors, because a lot of entrepreneurs are tuning in. What's the best way for them to share their story on
Yeah.
LinkedIn?
Yeah. So very high level, what we're looking for at LinkedIn is timely commentary on industry trends and items in the news that you're a unique expert in. So unpacking that a little bit, what does that mean? It means really being perceptive to the crowded, noisy media environment that we find ourselves in, and writing posts that are timely, fresh, and on things that are already top of mind. So, doing exactly what I do when I wake up in the morning and looking at the news, seeing what people are talking about, and then seeing who and how I can get a conversation onto LinkedIn about that. So if you are let's go with a concrete example. If you're a social media expert and you wake up yesterday and you see that Giphy is now valued higher than the Washington Post and many other traditional media companies, that's a great opportunity to unpack why that is at a time when an audience is really interested in hearing about that, because they're trying to understand it for themselves. What we like to say is that we want LinkedIn to be a place of breaking views, not breaking news. So giving you insights into the news that you're reading elsewhere. So that's really, in terms of getting the maximum exposure on LinkedIn, that's the best equation to doing that. So really diving deep and figuring out what you're a unique expert in, and then waiting for those moments where that topic is in the news for you to chime in on.
And I think it's so important. I have a lot of friends who are founders and will tell me, I really want to start blogging about this, but I don't know where to start. That's a great place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's kind of overwhelming. There's, especially in the industry that we work in, there is almost an expectation to be prolific and to write about, anything and everything. So you have that online presence of, here I am, here's my company, and here's what I'm about. You want to have that presence for your audience, for your customer base, and probably for investors as well. And I think where founders in particular take a misstep is that they feel like they have to cover the basis of writing about all those general thought leadership topics that make startup land what startup land is. So how to create the perfect pitch deck, 7 ways to, go through your Series A, whatever it may be. And what we're finding on LinkedIn is that it's kind of avoiding those more general topics and diving deep into things that you're a unique expert in at a time when people really want to hear from you is the best way to be successful.
And I think it's important. I learned a great insight from David Mandel over at Pivot Desk. He said, when you're going out, as I'm sure you've learned the same, ask someone for their experiences.
Yeah.
Don't ask them to tell other people what to do.
Yeah.
Is that what you found works best when it comes to creating content?
Yeah. I mean, what's so interesting is the amount of times that I read content on LinkedIn and it doesn't sound like it's coming from the person who's writing it. what I tell people when they want to publish on LinkedIn is be able to answer two questions really effectively. The first question is, why am I writing this and not someone else? So you should be able to read your piece and it should be very clear why you chose this topic or why you're the unique expert in it or why, your personal experiences are shedding light into it. So if you can't answer that question, that means that it's not really you. And then the second question is, why are you hitting publish right now? That gets into more of that importance of timeliness and writing about content that's relevant.
And for individuals who do have the expertise or they've had a relevant experience in accordance to something that's happening right now, a lot of times if you're not a writer, you don't feel comfortable publishing. Why should they publish it?
Writing is hard and it's time consuming. And I think it's a mistake to ignore that or for me to say that that's not the reality. But I think specifically when you're talking about founders and entrepreneurs, the reason, particularly when you're writing about a topic that you're extremely passionate about on LinkedIn, it's an opportunity for you to build your brand in a way that no other platform can really do for you. So when you publish on LinkedIn, it shows up on your profile. And when people Google you, one of the first things that shows up is your LinkedIn page. So demonstrating, it's a very clear way of demonstrating not only to your network, but to your future network, what you're excited about, what you're working on in a way that's meaningful for others, but also really meaningful for you. So a lot of the times I get from founders who are really busy trying to scale their business or get funding or whatever it is that they just don't have the time to write. But when you think about it from the perspective of this is your career, this is your journey, and this is your professional brand, I think that once you do start publishing on LinkedIn and seeing the engagement that you're getting, you'll realize that it really is worth the time investment.
And for someone who's new to writing and you reflect on your experiences,
yeah,
how do you get into a state of flow to tell a story?
Oh gosh. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, writing is still challenging for me. But I go back to 3 years ago when I was a writer at the Huffington Post right after college. And it was dreadful. It was it was my job to write 4 or 5 stories a day. HuffPost was really about traffic at the time, still is. And it was like,
it's hard.
It was like going to the dentist. But now I find when I sit down to write, it's a lot easier. And the reason that is, it's because I've spent so much time doing it. And, when I think about my most successful writers on LinkedIn, Tomasz of Red Point Ventures comes to mind. He's, a partner at Red Point Ventures, but he publishes every day on LinkedIn. How does he do it? He has a system and he wakes up at 5 every morning. He writes for an hour, and whatever comes on the other end, he publishes it. And I think that what that speaks to is just the importance of greasing those wheels. Even if you're not like Tomasz and you don't publish the posts, just getting into the habit of writing something every day. I have another VC, Max Mochweiler from Meritech, and the way that he kind of greases the oils for his writing ideas is that he'll actually send a status update a day onto LinkedIn and see the engagement on that. So just, like a tweet length idea, and he'll look at the engagement off those variety of different topics, and whichever one has the most engagement, that's what he'll decide to write a whole post on. So if writing for an hour every day is too much, just start sharing your ideas on status updates or with your friends in email, whatever you feel comfortable doing. And even that is going to get you into a position where you're better equipped to form an entire post.
And I think something that's really interesting about that is when you write, whether it's something you're going to publish or something you're just writing, and you do it freely with no pressure of, oh my God, someone's going to see this, you start getting all these ideas that you never would have expected.
Yeah. I think that's, just speaks to the importance of doing it frequently, because there are those moments where you think you're going to write about something and then you end up writing about something else. And it takes that creative process to get there. I mean, that's something that I struggle with. I'm a precrastinator, not a procrastinator. And Adam Grant recently wrote a post about how important it is to procrastinate or how important it is to kind of struggle with ideas, because that's when you really have that creative breakthrough. Whereas if you kind of just, work on something and get it done before deadline and not really think about what's to come or what the other options are, you can kind of fail at creating more creative ideas.
And as you sit down, so let's say you're sitting down to write a story or report on a story, do you have
Mhm.
a mantra for your work?
I don't know if it's a mantra, and this is actually probably a curse, not a blessing, and something that I wouldn't encourage others to follow. But if I don't have my lead, if I don't have those first few sentences of how I'm going to get the reader into the story, I have a really hard time going from there. And I often find that when you don't have that lead, that initial thought that's going to spark engagement and spark people to want to actually engage with your writing, that means the story isn't ready to be written yet. And that's kind of a signal to me that I should go back and do more reporting or maybe refine the idea or whatever it is. So I don't know if that's a mantra, but it definitely is the single thing I look for if I know that if I am ready to sit down and write or not.
When does it come to you? Is it random?
Recently, it's been coming to me a lot early in the morning. I live down in the marina area of San Francisco. So I have the privilege of being able to go on really like long runs on the beach down by the bay.
Not bad.
Yeah, really not a hard life. It was hard moving from New York, but that part is definitely not hard. And I've been getting a lot of ideas that way. But honestly, it's those really creative things where it's like, oh, I really want to draw a reader in. How am I going to do it? It's not really when I'm at my desk. It's when I probably least expect it, either on a run or in the shower or in some other moment where I'm not even actually thinking about it. It's in the back of my head, but I'm not thinking about it.
And I think for people who don't write, it's such an awesome moment when it comes to you and you
Oh,
can
yeah.
write it down, because when you do sit down to write that it'll just start out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just got to get the juices flowing. So, if you are experiencing writer's block, it's hard. I'm a workaholic, so this is hard for me to do as well. But when I am experiencing writer's block, I find that even just like getting out of the office, walking around the block for 5 minutes can help.
And as you focus, Caroline, on your experiences, whether at LinkedIn, Fortune, HuffPost, or even before that, what's been the steepest learning curve for you? Where did you grow the most?
Yeah, I would say definitely my transition from Fortune to LinkedIn was the steepest learning curve. When I was at Fortune, I was a traditional reporter. I had an editor who I reported to, and I would write stories, and that was really great. It was similar to the experience that I had at HuffPost with, my editor was basically the main person that I interacted with on a day-to-day basis. But since coming to LinkedIn, there are so many other interesting parts of my job that I have to think about and be strategic about. So I'm not just meeting with my editor, or other editors on the team every day. I'm meeting with product managers. I'm meeting with people who run the algorithms behind our feed. I'm meeting with our marketing team to figure out how we're going to get certain messages out to audiences on LinkedIn. So I'm having to interact with just a variety of different, extremely intelligent people with different skill sets than I do. And it's been just so great to kind of get insights into what they do on a day-to-day basis and being able to collaborate.
When you think of it in that sense of so many new experiences, do you do anything differently now than you did before?
I think I do, because now that I'm so much more focused in terms of, that once you hit publish, what happens next.
That was news to me, my friend. Like, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. Since I'm so much more in the weeds of that, it definitely has an impact on the work that I do prior. So the stories that I choose, the people that I decide to profile, when I hit publish, what the social media plan is off of that. So definitely, hands down, it definitely has had an impact on my work across the board.
And where you are today, do you have any informal or formal mentors that are kind of helping shape that path or that you look up to?
Yeah. I'm extremely fortunate in that I have a lot of great mentors, both internally and externally, who have, kind of helped me along the way through difficult moves in my career and just insights like that. What I find is that the best mentors for me personally have been people who aren't actually working in the field that I'm working in, but have a job that's different, whether it's at LinkedIn or it's outside of the company, because they can just bring a perspective to what I'm working on and what I'm doing and what I want to accomplish that, others can't. So that's been really rewarding, kind of cultivating those experiences. And I'm definitely in a fortunate position because a big part of my job is interviewing people all day and meeting great business leaders. And a lot of those business leaders have turned into friends, which has been, great for me.
What's the best feedback, whether warranted or unwarranted, that you've received along the way?
Yeah. So the best feedback that I've ever received was from Carol Loomis, who is a famed editor at Fortune. She recently retired at over the age of 80. She is one of the most prolific and respected business journalists of our time and beyond. And when I was at Fortune, I had a problem in that I was 23 when I started there. I have blonde hair. And I would go into these interviews with these executives, and you could tell just by the look on their face, like they were wondering what person who managed their schedule messed up and gave this 23-year-old blonde girl an hour of their time. They totally underestimated me. And when I started out, and I still have those experiences where I walk into rooms and I can tell that this person, doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, is kind of like, who is this girl? And why am I speaking with her? And who is she? And I came to Carol with that problem. And what she said to me is, use that to your advantage. And what she meant is that if someone's underestimating you, go in as prepared as you can be and just blow them away. And from a reporter's perspective, it's great because I walk into these meetings and I'm underestimated and they kind of feel like they can take it easy. And so I get really great answers from them, really great anecdotes. So rather than, and that was really a larger lesson for me of, turning your problems on their head and really seeing, okay, this is unfortunate, it's uncomfortable, but how can I use this reality to my advantage?
And what are some things that you've uncovered because of that? The question, like, what are your favorite questions to ask people?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to out any executives who have been sleuthed by my age. But I think it goes back to that idea of making people comfortable. Mm-hmm. So I have an easy time doing that because, I feel like, again, my age makes them feel like they can relax. But honestly, one of the best questions that I always ask is there anything that we talked about that we didn't talk about that you think is important to this discussion? So asking them like, hey, I just interviewed you for 30 or 45 minutes. Is there anything else that you think is extremely important that we haven't talked about?
I love that. And sometimes you ask someone that and it ends up shaping your whole story.
Yeah, exactly. Because they have something that, they wouldn't have said unless, you asked them that question.
I love it. All right. The last 3 questions for you, Caroline, we always do, and they don't focus on work. They focus more on life.
Sure.
So we'll start with this one. You have 2 dogs who you love.
I have 2 dogs? I really want just one dog.
2? I thought Brady and Bear.
Oh, Brady and Bear. Yes, they are my parents' dogs, but yes, they are my dogs. That is very true.
They're yours. If they could each say one thing, what do you think they would say?
Bear would say, "Where's the ball?" for sure, because that's what he's obsessed with. Or where's food? Like he's very food motivated, but also if we're outside, you could throw the ball for him for hours, and he would love that. And then Brady would say, "Can we go to bed now?" So Brady and Bear, they are brothers and they're best friends, but they have very different personalities. And Brady is, if there's a party going on at the house, Brady will go down into his room and kind of just cuddle up. Bear's the social one who will just wait for everyone until the party's all over and everyone's in bed before he calms down. So yeah, Bear would say, "Where's my ball?" or "Where's food?" And Brady would say, "Can we go to bed now?"
I think I'm with Brady.
Yeah, exactly. He's a huge snuggler.
All right. Question 2. If you could give everyone a fortune cookie with an insight of your choice inside, what would you write?
That's a really good one. This is one that I'm still growing to be accepted of, but it's definitely important to me. The quote is, "I'm not afraid of storms because I'm still learning to steer my ship." So not being afraid of challenges, not being afraid of failing, because that's when you really grow, and that's when you really realize what your strengths and weaknesses are.
I love it. Still learning too, trust me.
Yeah, every day.
All right, last one. What's one question that you've always wanted to be asked? Personal, professional, athletic achievement from when you were 7 that nobody's ever asked you?
Oh, that's such a good question. A question that I've never. You know what people rarely kind of shy away from is I grew up in Sun Valley, Idaho. And I think that people never ask about that experience because they're like, first of all, what is Idaho? Is your dad a potato farmer? And I wish that people would ask me about that more because it was just so important in terms of who I am as a person and how I was shaped. I went to a high school that was an outdoor leadership academy. So I spent about a third of my high school and middle school experiences outdoors, learning and hiking and rafting and mountain biking and, any outdoor sport you can imagine, we've done it. And that really shaped a lot of my strengths, I think, and my ability to adapt and learn new skills. And so that would probably be it, is ask me more about my time in Idaho and visit Idaho. It's a beautiful state.
When you think of that time, I'm going to tie in that question actually. How do you feel like it prepared you for where you are today?
Yeah. Well, what's so amazing about outdoor education is that there are challenges that crop up that you can't anticipate and you can't prepare for. And you are literally in the elements and subject to the elements.
Oh God.
And I'm still working on this every day, but kind of it helped me kind of being able to let go of the things that I can't control. I think that one of the biggest mistakes that young professionals make is trying to control everything. And I do that too, where it's like, I want everything to be a certain way, but you have to realize what are the things in my day that I can control and what are the things in my day that I can't control, and really focusing on the things that you can control and trying to put the things you can't control in the background. And that was probably, I think, the biggest meta lesson from that time outdoors.
Was there one experience that just shocked you?
So when I was a junior in high school, we had a trip at my high school called Junior Solo, and you were alone for
I've heard
4
of
days.
these.
Yeah. So I was alone without any human interaction for 4 full days. There are safeguards in place so that people knew that I was alive. But that was actually when I think I really realized how much I enjoyed writing. Because I filled, I think, a notebook like this big full with ideas and thoughts. And that experience was amazing because, thinking about it, when was the last time that you went even a few hours without interacting with someone? So having that time alone, I think, was really powerful.
Very, very cool. I don't know if I could do 4 days, but I think it's an important practice for anyone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it was amazing.
I can't thank you enough for spending time with us on the show today and sharing your work at LinkedIn and your experiences, and even that last one about just kind of taking some time with your thoughts. What's the best way for everyone to stay up to date with you personally, but also for someone who wants to start publishing on LinkedIn? How can they get started?
Yeah, well, the best way to stay up to date with me is follow me on LinkedIn and on Twitter and on Facebook. And I think in terms of getting started publishing on LinkedIn, the best way to do that is to just jump right in. I think the biggest mistake you can make is being like, okay, I'm going to write an editorial calendar. I'm going to write about these 6 topics in 6 months. And that really puts a kibosh on everything that we just talked about in terms of being timely and relevant. So just figuring out what you want to write about and waiting for those key moments and then just diving right in. And yeah, you can, if you have a great post, you can, tweet at me about it or, send it as a status update on LinkedIn and mention me. And that's the best way to kind of get my attention.
I love it. And on Twitter, you're C-Fair, right?
Yep, C-Fair1.
C-Fair1. Awesome.
I've never met the real C-Fair, but, maybe she's listening and I want my Twitter handle back.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Thank you. Take care.